You are about to hear a story that sounds like something written for a movie, yet the nightmare behind it is painfully real for far too many people. Imagine a man with the authority to sign warrants that could change lives being stripped of his dignity beside a highway by an officer who believed his badge gave him permission to play God. Officer Bryce Maddox thought he was arresting another criminal when he planted an ounce of narcotics beneath the rear floor mat of a luxury sedan. He did not know that the man sitting behind the wheel was United States District Judge Jeremiah Cole, the same judge who reviewed search warrant applications from Bryce's own precinct and whose name was being considered for appointment to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. This is the story of a federal prison sentence, a public reckoning, and the moment the justice system finally turned its teeth upon one of its own. Rain did not simply fall across Interstate 94. It hammered the asphalt and transformed the Chicago skyline into a blurred watercolor of gray and orange. Inside his Genesis G90, Judge Jeremiah P. Cole enjoyed the perfect silence that expensive engineering could create. Jeremiah was a man of precise habits. The seat heater remained on its usual setting. The climate control held the cabin at exactly 70 degrees. A biography of Thurgood Marshall played through the Bang & Olufsen sound system. He was not speeding. He rarely did. The law was not merely Jeremiah's profession. It was his religion, and he practiced it with the strict devotion of a monk. He was exhausted. A RICO trial involving the vice lords had just concluded inside his courtroom at the Dirksen Federal Building. Reading the jury instructions alone had required enormous concentration. Jeremiah wanted only to return home to his wife, Naomi, in Hyde Park. Then police lights exploded inside his rearview mirror. Jeremiah sighed, the sound carrying a weariness deeper than physical fatigue. He checked the speedometer. 54 miles per hour in a 55 mile per hour zone. He checked his position. The car remained perfectly centered inside the lane. Jeremiah touched the brake, activated the turn signal, and guided the large black sedan onto the shoulder. Gravel cracked beneath the tires as heavy rain lashed the windshield. Behind him, Officer Bryce Maddox sat inside a Dodge Charger, chewing on a toothpick that had long since lost its flavor. Bryce had spent much of his career building a reputation as what he proudly called a street monster. The department's internal risk assessments used a different description. They considered him a liability. Bryce was heavyset, with a thick neck spilling over his uniform collar and eyes that constantly searched for prey. "What do we have?" Rookie Officer Tessa Grant asked from the passenger seat. She had only recently graduated from the police academy. She remained idealistic, inexperienced, and nervous. "Black Genesis G90, tinted windows, new plates," Bryce muttered while entering the number into the mobile data computer. "Probably a drug dealer transporting product back toward the south side." He looked toward Tessa. "These guys like Korean luxury cars now. They think it makes them look like businessmen." Tessa examined the screen. "The vehicle is registered to a company called Cole Legal Group." "Shell Corporation," Bryce said, dismissing the information with one hand. "Money laundering. Watch this." He did not wait for dispatch to complete the registration check. Bryce opened the door, stepped into the rain, and adjusted his duty belt. He did not put on his hat. Bryce liked the rain. He believed it made him appear intimidating. He touched his body camera not to activate it, but to ensure that a tactical pouch covered the lens. It was a convenient malfunction he had perfected throughout his career. Jeremiah watched the officer approaching through the side mirror. He did everything he had taught his sons to do. The interior light went on. The window came down. His hands remained clearly visible on the steering wheel. No sudden movements. Bryce reached the window and directed a powerful flashlight straight into Jeremiah's eyes. "License and registration," he barked. There was no greeting, no name, no identification as a Chicago police officer. "Good evening, officer," Jeremiah replied. His deep baritone voice had commanded courtrooms for much of his career. "May I reach into the glove compartment for my registration? My wallet is inside my coat pocket." "Do not tell me what you are going to do," Bryce snapped, leaning closer and allowing rainwater to fall from his face into the luxury sedan. "Give me the identification." "Have you been drinking?" "I have not." "Your eyes look glassy." "I am tired, officer. I am returning from work." Bryce gave a short, contemptuous laugh. "Work? Wearing a suit like that? What street corner are you working? Selling drugs or running numbers?" Jeremiah's body stiffened. The insult was old, predictable, and dangerous. He slowly reached into his jacket and removed a leather wallet. Jeremiah handed over his standard Illinois driver's license. He kept his judicial identification separate because he did not want anyone accusing him of seeking special treatment during an ordinary traffic stop. Bryce grabbed the card. "Jeremiah Cole, all right, step out of the car." "For what reason?" Jeremiah asked, tightening his hands slightly around the steering wheel. "I was not speeding, and I committed no traffic violation." "I smell marijuana," Bryce lied. It was one of the oldest methods used to manufacture probable cause, a universal key officers like him used to force open the protections of the Fourth Amendment. Exit the vehicle or I will pull you out. Inside the patrol car, Tessa watched with a deepening frown. She did not smell marijuana. The cruiser windows remained closed, but she was a rookie, and Bryce was her field training officer. Rookies were taught not to question their training officers. Jeremiah took a slow breath. He knew Pennsylvania versus Mims, which allowed officers to direct drivers to exit vehicles during traffic stops for safety. He also knew Rodriguez versus United States, which prohibited extending a stop without reasonable suspicion. But beside a dark highway, legal precedent could not stop a bullet. I am complying, Jeremiah said clearly. He released his seatbelt and opened the door. Rain immediately soaked through his bespoke suit. Bryce seized his arm, turned him around, and drove him against the rear quarter panel of the Genesis. Spread your feet, he growled, kicking Jeremiah's ankles farther apart. Bryce searched him aggressively, lingering around his pockets and feeling for anything that might justify the story already forming inside his mind. Officer, Jeremiah said, with his face pressed against the cold, rain-covered metal, you are making a serious mistake. I am a United States district. I do not care if you are the king of Wakanda, Bryce interrupted, forcing Jeremiah's face harder against the vehicle. Be quiet, you are resisting. I am not resisting, Jeremiah answered calmly, even as his heart struck against his ribs. Tessa, Bryce shouted toward the cruiser. Bring the handcuffs. We have a fighter. Tessa hurried from the passenger seat, fumbling with her equipment. He is fighting? She asked, confused. Jeremiah appeared to be standing completely still. He tightened his muscles, Bryce said, winking at her as she approached. That counts as assaulting an officer in my book. Cuff him and place him in the back. I am searching the car. Jeremiah closed his eyes as the cold metal locked around his wrists. He did not struggle. He did not shout. He began memorizing details. Badge number 4922. Nameplate Maddox. Dodge Charger. License plate MP 8921. He was no longer merely a driver enduring a traffic stop. He was a judge assembling a record, and the future defendant stood directly in front of him. Jeremiah sat inside the rear of the cruiser, the hard plastic seat pressed into his spine. The cramped cage smelled of old vomit and industrial disinfectant. Through the rain-covered partition, he watched the violation of his civil rights from the front row. Bryce searched the Genesis. He was not looking for the vehicle registration. He was tearing the interior apart, documents from the center console scattered across the seats. The glove compartment hung open. Bryce had expected to find a gun, cash, or something else that would support the drug dealer narrative he had already created. The car contained nothing suspicious. Only legal briefs, a lint roller, and a bottle of water. Clean, Bryce muttered while searching beneath the passenger seat. Too clean. He stood, wiped rainwater from his face, and looked toward the cruiser. Tessa waited near the rear door, visibly uncomfortable. Did you find anything? She called, her voice nearly disappearing beneath the wind. Give me a moment, Bryce shouted. He turned his back, using his wide body to block Tessa's view. Bryce reached inside the hidden pocket of his tactical vest behind a spare magazine. His fingers closed around a plastic sandwich bag. It contained roughly an ounce of powdered drywall mixed with a small amount of methamphetamine, material he had taken from a drug user and never entered into evidence. Bryce called it his insurance policy. He leaned inside the Genesis, lifted the rear passenger floor mat, and pushed the bag halfway underneath it. He deliberately left one corner exposed. Got you, he whispered. Bryce withdrew from the car and waved Tessa toward him. Grant witnessed this. Tessa ran through the rain, her hair sticking to her forehead. What is it? Look what our choir boy was hiding, Bryce said, directing his flashlight toward the mat. There it is. An ounce, felony possession with intent to distribute. Tessa looked inside. She saw the plastic bag. Her stomach tightened. She had not witnessed Bryce discovering it. She had only seen him pointing toward it. The implication was clear. Are you certain it was already there? She asked, her voice trembling. Bryce turned sharply, bringing his face close to hers. What did you say? I only meant that I did not see it when I looked through the window. That is because you are a rookie and do not know where to look, Bryce hissed. I found it. You are witnessing the recovery. That establishes chain of custody. Do not become weak now, Tessa. Do you want to be a police officer or a social worker? Write the report. It does not look like an entire ounce. It is, whatever I say it is, until the laboratory weighs it. Bag the evidence. Bryce marched back to the cruiser and pulled open the rear door. Jeremiah looked up at him, his expression impossible to read. Well, Judge, Bryce said with a smirk, leaning into the car with breath smelling of stale coffee and malice. You are facing serious trouble. We discovered a substantial amount of narcotics beneath your seat. Jeremiah did not blink. He did not panic. His eyes moved from Bryce's face to the body camera. He saw the tactical pouch covering the lens. Officer Maddox, Jeremiah said with terrifying calm, is your body camera recording? Bryce touched his chest. It is active. Do not worry. It captured everything. Good, Jeremiah replied. I would hate for there to be any uncertainty about what happened. Save the legal language for your public defender. Bryce laughed. You are going to the 11th district. I hope you enjoy cheese sandwiches. He slammed the door and climbed behind the wheel. Bryce activated the radio. Dispatch 4 David 20, one subject in custody transporting to the 11th district for possession with intent. Send a tow vehicle for the sedan. Dispatch acknowledged him. The patrol car entered traffic, leaving the expensive Genesis on the shoulder to be taken away. Jeremiah closed his eyes. He was not praying. He was developing a strategy. Now he remembered exactly who Bryce Maddox was. Jeremiah had seen the name on an application for a no-knock search warrant. He had rejected that application because the alleged probable cause was too weak. Bryce had not recognized the judge. The judge remembered the officer's careless paperwork. Bryce had just framed a man who possessed the private telephone number of the United States Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. Jeremiah remained silent. Revealing his identity on the highway could make Bryce panic. A frightened, corrupt officer beside a dark road could transform a false arrest into a supposedly justified killing. He reached for my weapon. He attacked me. That was what they would say. The safest place for Jeremiah was now a holding cell. The station contained cameras Bryce could not control. You are quiet back there, Bryce said, watching him through the rearview mirror. Realizing your life is finished? I am considering the law, Jeremiah answered. Which law? Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 242, Jeremiah recited as naturally as Scripture, deprivation of rights under color of law. The maximum penalty may become life imprisonment when kidnapping is involved. You have unlawfully seized me and are transporting me against my will. We are approaching that definition. Bryce laughed so violently that he struck the steering wheel. Listen to this. We have a legal expert in the back. Tessa did not laugh. She stared through the window with her hands trembling in her lap. A sickening realization spread through her. They had driven over the edge of something terrible and had not yet reached the bottom. The booking room of the 11th District Station assaulted every sense. It smelled of bleach, unwashed bodies, and despair. Fluorescent lights created a painful hum above scratched linoleum floors where countless lives had reached their lowest point. Bryce marched Jeremiah through the steel doors with a swagger large enough to fill the room. He held the judge's upper arm tightly enough to leave bruises, displaying his prisoner like a hunter carrying a trophy. What do you have, Bryce? Sergeant Russell Pierce asked from behind the desk. Another stray? Russell was a veteran officer with gray skin and tired eyes. He tapped a pen against a pile of paperwork. A major arrest, Bryce announced, pushing Jeremiah toward the counter. Felony possession with intent to distribute. I stopped him in a Genesis G90. He was probably transporting product for the gangster disciples. Jeremiah stood straight despite the handcuffs cutting into his wrists. His tailored suit was wet and stained by rain and roadside dirt. His posture remained impeccable. He looked directly at Russell with such calm intensity that the experienced sergeant immediately became uneasy. Name, Russell asked while looking at his computer. Jeremiah P. Cole, Bryce answered for him. And he talks constantly. Quotes legal statutes, thinks he is Perry Mason. Russell entered the name, then he stopped. He narrowed his eyes at the screen. Slowly, Russell looked up and truly examined the prisoner. The expertly tailored suit, the carefully maintained hands, the precise knot in the necktie, the face. Russell had seen that face in newspapers and on television during major corruption trials. His stomach became cold. Remove the handcuffs, he said quietly. Bryce blinked. What? I said remove the handcuffs now. Are you serious? This man is a felon. I found an ounce of narcotics beneath his seat. You do not uncuff a criminal until he enters the cell. Russell stood so quickly that his chair scraped across the floor. The room became silent. Officers stopped working and turned toward them. Do you know who this man is? Yes, a drug dealer named Jeremiah. This is the Honorable Jeremiah Cole, Russell said, his voice rising. United States District Judge for the Northern District of Illinois. He signs your federal warrant applications. He is the judge who sent the Latin King's leadership to a supermax prison. The silence became absolute. The vending machine humming in the hallway suddenly seemed loud. Bryce scoffed. I do not care if he is the Pope. I found drugs inside his vehicle. No one is above the law. Correct, Sergeant? You unbelievable fool, Russell whispered. He turned toward Jeremiah. Your Honor, I apologize. I do not understand what happened, but... Sergeant Pierce, Jeremiah said. His calm, commanding voice was more frightening than shouting. I want these handcuffs removed. Then I want you to process me according to every standard procedure. Photograph me. Take my fingerprints. Document every step of the arrest. Do not give me special treatment. Treat me exactly as Officer Maddox intended. Treat me the way this department was prepared to treat me before learning my position. Russell hesitated. Judge, we could contact the captain. We can correct this. You cannot correct it, Jeremiah replied coldly. The crime has already occurred. We are now preserving the evidence. Process me. Bryce gave a nervous laugh. He is bluffing. Judges can be corrupt too. I caught him. I should be considered a hero. Russell looked at Bryce with pure disgust. Officer Grant, he ordered, turning toward the rookie shrinking into the corner. Remove the handcuffs. Fingerprint him. Place him alone inside holding cell 1. Give him coffee, a chair, or anything else he requests. Tessa hurried forward. Her hands trembled so badly that she dropped the key before opening the cuffs. Jeremiah rubbed his wrists. Deep red impressions surrounded them. Thank you, Officer Grant, he said softly. You may continue. The station entered a state of controlled panic. Jeremiah completed every stage of booking with dignified silence. He pressed his fingers against the glass scanner. He stood before the height chart. The camera flashed. A booking photograph of Federal Judge Jeremiah Cole, wet, disheveled, and staring into the lens with the burning eyes of a biblical prophet, entered the department's computer system. While officers escorted him toward the holding cell, Jeremiah stopped. He turned toward Bryce, who leaned against a filing cabinet and pretended to be unconcerned while sweat covered his face. Officer Maddox, you said earlier that you possess an instinct for identifying criminals. I do, Bryce answered, although his voice cracked. Then you should smell the fear inside the station, Jeremiah said, because it is not coming from me. The cell door closed. Jeremiah sat upon the metal bench. He did not sleep. He waited. He knew exactly which telephone call he would make. He also knew that the storm approaching Chicago would make the rain outside appear gentle. The call did not go to a bail bond company. Jeremiah called Preston Vale. Preston, known throughout the legal world as the Shark, was a senior partner at Vale, Sterling & Cooper. He wore costly suits and considered settlements below several $1 million professional failures. He had also been Jeremiah's roommate at Harvard Law School. Jeremiah, Preston answered, is everything all right? Is Naomi safe? I am currently being held at the 11th District Police Station, Jeremiah said without emotion. I have been arrested for possessing cocaine with intent to distribute. The other end of the line became silent. Jeremiah heard sheets moving and feet striking the floor. Say that again. Officer Bryce Maddox, badge number 4922. He planted the evidence, Preston. I watched him do it, and I intend to destroy him. I want you to represent me. Bring the entire firm. I am coming, Preston said, his voice sharpening into a weapon. Do not speak to anyone. Not one word. The 11th District Station soon felt as though it were under siege. Captain Warren Slade, the station commander, received an urgent call from Sergeant Pierce. He entered the building wearing informal clothing beneath a hastily added coat, his face filled with fury. Warren went directly into the interrogation room where Bryce waited. What did you do? He shouted, striking the table with his fist. Bryce jumped. Captain, I am telling you the man is guilty. I found the bag beneath the floor mat. He was driving a Genesis through a bad neighborhood. That man is Judge Jeremiah Cole, Warren roared. Do you understand who he is? He is one of the most respected federal judges in this state. He is being considered for the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. You believe he secretly distributes ounces of contaminated cocaine? Maybe he uses it, you do not know. Warren stared at him. He knew. Every experienced officer inside the station knew. A tactical pouch positioned over the body camera lens was one of the familiar signs of a corrupt stop. Warren turned toward the rookie. And you, Officer Grant? Tessa sat in a corner crying. She raised her red eyes. I know you did not plant the drugs, Warren said. I saw your expression. You were a new officer following a field training officer whom you believed controlled your future. Now you have a choice. You can remain the loyal partner who enters federal prison for conspiracy, or you can become the witness who saves her career. Tears remained in Tessa's eyes. He keeps a ledger, she whispered. Warren became still. What? Bryce keeps a ledger inside a locker at his private gym in Lincoln Park, not inside the station. He mentioned it once while he was intoxicated. He calls it his scoreboard. He writes down the names of the people he frames and lists whatever he took from them, cash, jewelry, and narcotics. Tessa looked around as though Bryce might suddenly appear behind her. He keeps confiscated evidence outside the system. He calls it the recycle bin. He takes drugs without recording them, then plants them on the next person who challenges him. It is a cycle. Warren slowly released his breath. He writes everything down. He believed no one could touch him, Tessa said. He could not be touched, Warren replied, until he stopped the wrong car. The FBI searched Bryce's private locker at the Ironworks gym. Agents used bolt cutters rather than waiting for anyone to open it. Beneath dirty workout clothing, they discovered a black composition notebook. Inside a duffel bag was what investigators began calling the candy store. Separate packages contained cocaine, heroin, and fentanyl. Agents also recovered unregistered firearms, weapons used as drop guns, and large amounts of cash wrapped in rubber bands. The notebook destroyed any remaining defense. Written in Bryce's hurried handwriting were names, property, narcotics, and comments about the people he had targeted. It was more than evidence. It was a confession. When officials in Chicago learned about the ledger, panic spread through the city government. City Attorney Graham Porter immediately contacted Preston. "We want to settle," Graham said. "The arrest will be vacated. We will offer Judge Cole several $1,000,000 for what happened, and Officer Maddox will be forced to resign." Preston activated the speaker so Jeremiah could hear. Jeremiah leaned toward the telephone. "Mr. Porter, this is Jeremiah Cole." "Judge, it is good to hear your voice. We want to resolve this situation." "Several $1,000,000, Jeremiah interrupted. "That offer is insulting." "Not to you, Judge. To the taxpayers. That is a standard payment in a wrongful arrest case." "This is not merely a wrongful arrest," Jeremiah replied. "This is a criminal enterprise operating beneath the banner of the Chicago Police Department. You will not settle only with me. You will compensate Desmond Hayes. You will compensate every person listed inside that black notebook." "There are names?" Graham asked, his voice tightening.
"Many names."
"We cannot do that. It could bankrupt the city's liability fund."
"Then begin selling assets."
"I am filing a civil rights lawsuit under Section 1983. I will seek substantial compensation for myself and establish a class action fund for every victim. I will not accept Bryce Maddox's resignation as a sufficient outcome. He belongs in prison. We do not control the criminal prosecution. You understand that." "Then move out of the way," Jeremiah said. "We will see you in court." The criminal trial of the United States versus Bryce Maddox became one of Chicago's most closely watched legal proceedings. News vehicles from networks across the country surrounded the Dirksen Federal Building. Bryce faced charges including deprivation of rights under color of law, under Title 18, Section 242, possession with intent to distribute narcotics, and obstruction of justice. Because Jeremiah served as a federal judge in the same district, the case was assigned to a visiting judge to preserve impartiality. Judge Celeste Rowan arrived from the Southern District of New York. Attorneys called her the Scalpel because of the precision of her rulings. The courtroom was filled. Naomi sat in the front row, holding Jeremiah's hand. Behind them sat Desmond Hayes, wearing a new suit Jeremiah had purchased for him. Dozens of other people named inside Bryce's scoreboard ledger filled the remaining rows. Bryce sat at the defense table. He appeared smaller than he had beside the highway. The police uniform was gone. He wore an inexpensive gray suit that fit poorly. His head had been shaved. He no longer looked like a monster. He looked like a trapped animal. His attorney, Gavin Mercer, was a high-priced defense lawyer paid by the Fraternal Order of Police. Gavin's strategy was simple: attack the victim. United States Attorney Marisol Vega presented the government's case with methodical precision. She showed the jury patrol car footage. She displayed the ledger. Then she called Tessa Grant. Tessa cried while testifying, but she did not retreat from the truth. "He ordered me to witness the discovery," she told the jurors. "He said the amount was whatever he claimed it was. He told me that when I refused to support him, I was acting like a social worker instead of a police officer." "Did you see the narcotics before Officer Maddox pointed toward them?" Marisol asked. "No," Tessa answered. "The vehicle was clean." When Gavin began the defense, he did not attack the rookie. He attacked Jeremiah. The defense called the judge to the witness stand. Jeremiah walked forward, took the oath, and sat comfortably. The courtroom had always been his arena. "Judge Cole," Gavin began while pacing before the jury, "you are a powerful man, are you not?" "I am a public servant," Jeremiah corrected him. "You have influential friends. You did not appreciate being stopped. You felt disrespected." "I felt threatened." "You immediately told Officer Maddox that you were a judge because you wanted to use your influence." "I identified myself because I wanted him to understand that I recognized the laws he was violating." Gavin scoffed. "Is it not true that you have a reputation for being soft on crime? Have you not dismissed cases against drug dealers?" "Objection," Marisol said. "Relevance." "It demonstrates bias," Gavin argued. "The witness has a personal hostility toward police officers." "Sustained," Judge Rowan ruled. Continued to another question. Gavin leaned toward the witness stand. "You claim Officer Maddox planted the drugs. Is it not possible someone else placed them inside your vehicle? Perhaps a defendant who believed you treated him too leniently? Perhaps Officer Maddox was simply performing his duty?" Jeremiah leaned forward. The microphone amplified his deep voice. "Mr. Mercer, my vehicle is professionally cleaned every week. As a federal judge, I remain under continuous threat assessment. No one enters that vehicle except my wife and me." The suggestion that a bag containing drywall powder and methamphetamine matching material previously seized by Officer Maddox, appeared beneath my floor mat at precisely the moment he needed probable cause creates what your profession might describe as a mathematical impossibility. In this courtroom, we call it a lie. The jurors looked toward Gavin. He had lost them. The final blow did not come from the ledger. It came from technology. The prosecution called Dr. Felicia Ward, a digital forensics specialist with the FBI. Dr. Ward, Marisol asked, you examined Officer Maddox's body camera. The defense claims the camera malfunctioned. Is that correct? No, Felicia answered, adjusting her glasses. A tactical pouch obstructed the lens. The microphone remained functional. The defense also argues that the camera was not recording during the search. That is technically correct. Officer Maddox did not press the recording button until after he claimed to discover the narcotics. Bryce's face became pale. He grabbed his attorney's arm. Gavin looked confused. He had not known about this evidence. However, Felicia continued, Axon body cameras contain a feature known as pre-event buffering. The devices continuously maintain a temporary loop of video and audio before the officer activates the recording function. Once the officer begins recording, the preceding segment may also be preserved. We enhance the audio contained inside that buffer. Would you play it for the jury? Marisol asked. The courtroom became completely silent. Felicia started the recording. Static, rain, heavy breathing, plastic rustling. Then Bryce's voice appeared clearly. All right, Your Honor, let us see how you like this. There, got you. A zipper followed. Then Bryce shouted, Grant witnessed this. The recording stopped. Silence weighed upon the room. It was the sound of a career, a life, and an entire defense collapsing at once. Bryce lowered his head into his hands. The jury reached its verdict quickly. The foreperson, a retired teacher, did not look toward Bryce while reading it. In the matter of the United States versus Bryce Maddox, on the charge of deprivation of rights under color of law, guilty. On the charge of possession with intent to distribute, guilty. On the charge of obstruction of justice, guilty. Judge Rowan looked toward the defense table. The defendant will be remanded into federal custody. Sentencing will follow. Federal marshals approached with the same kind of steel handcuffs Bryce had placed around countless other wrists. As they secured him, Bryce looked toward the gallery. His eyes met Jeremiah's. Jeremiah did not smile or celebrate. He gave one slow nod. It carried the finality of a closing gavel. The criminal prosecution sent Bryce to prison. The civil lawsuit attacked the system that had created and protected him. Preston and Jeremiah brought a Monell claim demonstrating that Chicago had maintained a pattern and practice of ignoring complaints against officers like Bryce. They proved that city officials knew he was corrupt and failed to intervene because his arrest numbers appeared impressive. The civil jury was furious. It awarded Jeremiah millions of dollars in compensatory damages and additional millions in punitive damages. Jeremiah did not keep the money. During a press conference on the courthouse steps, he stood before a wall of microphones. Millions of dollars, Jeremiah said. That is the monetary value the jury placed upon my dignity. But dignity cannot be purchased. I am announcing the creation of the Cole Hayes Justice Initiative. He gestured toward Desmond Hayes standing beside him. This money will fund a legal defense team dedicated to victims of police misconduct. It will pay Desmond his college tuition when he returns to engineering school. It will also finance the appeals of every person named inside Bryce Maddox's ledger. The crowd cheered. Desmond wiped tears from his face. During sentencing, Bryce stood before Judge Rowan. Mr. Maddox, she said, looking over her glasses, you took an oath. You used your badge as a shield while committing crimes and as a sword while destroying lives. You did more than violate the law. You destroyed the public's trust. The punishment must therefore be severe. Judge Rowan imposed a lengthy federal prison sentence without the possibility of parole. Chains rattled as marshals led Bryce away. He passed Jeremiah for the final time. It is not fair, Bryce muttered. Jeremiah looked at him. Fairness is a principle owed to the innocent, Mr. Maddox. For the guilty, the law provides justice. Chicago eventually moved forward as large cities always did, but the mark left by Cole versus City of Chicago remained visible, a lasting warning to everyone carrying a badge. The auditorium at the University of Illinois Chicago later filled with the energy of graduates and their families. The dean of the College of Engineering approached the podium, Desmond Marcus Hayes. A roar rose from the front row. It was more than polite applause. It was a thunderous and defiant celebration. Desmond crossed the stage with a gold honor cord resting over his graduation gown. He shook the dean's hand, accepted his diploma, and looked into the audience. He did not search for his parents first. He looked toward a tall, gray-bearded man seated beside them. Judge Jeremiah Cole stood and applauded. He had aged, and his movements were slightly slower, but his presence remained powerful. Preston sat beside him, smiling like a proud uncle. Desmond raised the diploma toward them in a silent acknowledgement. You helped to give me this. After the ceremony, amid photographs and graduation caps flying through the air, Desmond found Jeremiah. You did it, Jeremiah said. Magna cum laude, not bad for a man with a criminal record. An expunged criminal record, Jeremiah corrected with a smile. You are free, Desmond, in every meaning of the word. I received a job offer, Desmond said. A civil engineering firm in Seattle. They know what happened. They said they respect the resilience it took to return. Accept it, Jeremiah said. Go build your bridges. Far away, inside the sterile concrete interior of the United States Penitentiary in Marion, Bryce sat inside a solitary recreation area. He looked far older. The heavy build that once supported his street monster image had become soft. His hair was gone. His skin had become pale from the absence of sunlight. Prison was difficult for everyone. For a former police officer, it was hell. Bryce remained in protective custody, isolated from the general population for his own safety. Entering the main prison yard could mean death. The gangs he had targeted and the men he framed had relatives and associates throughout the system. Bryce spent most of each day alone inside a small cell. He had no friends. The correctional officers disliked him because his presence complicated their work. The prisoners hated what he represented. Occasionally, Bryce received a letter from the Cole Hayes Justice Initiative. It was a standard update describing convictions overturned through evidence found inside his own scoreboard ledger. Dear Mr. Maddox, we are pleased to inform you that Leonard Tate's conviction has been vacated because of misconduct documented in your records. Mr. Tate has returned home to his family. Sincerely, the Cole Hayes Justice Initiative. Bryce crushed the letter inside his fist. He had designed his own purgatory. He had wanted to become a legend on the streets. Now he was a warning repeated to Academy recruits. Do not become another Maddox. Jeremiah sat inside his new chambers at the Dirksen Federal Building. Following the trial, he had been confirmed to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. The scandal had not destroyed his career. It had elevated him. The public viewed Jeremiah as a symbol of fairness, a man who understood the justice system from both the judicial bench and the rear seat of a patrol car. He looked through the window toward the Chicago skyline, the same gray and orange watercolor he had seen in the mirror during the traffic stop. His phone vibrated. Tessa Grant was calling. She was no longer a rookie. She had become an internal affairs detective. Tessa had nearly resigned after the trial, but Jeremiah persuaded her to remain. The system does not need fewer police officers, he told her. It needs better ones. Become the officer you wanted to be beside that highway. Judge, Tessa said when he answered. We completed the investigation into the 11th District Narcotics Unit. Additional indictments are being prepared. The Maddox culture is finally being removed. Excellent work, Detective, Jeremiah replied. Continue digging. He ended the call and closed his briefcase. Jeremiah walked from the chambers, leaving his judicial robe hanging behind the door. He took the elevator to the garage. The Genesis G90 waited inside his designated space. It was immaculate. Jeremiah unlocked it and settled into the driver's seat. The silence was perfect. He drove from the garage. Rain was falling again. Jeremiah checked the speedometer. 35 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone. He checked the mirrors. A patrol car followed behind him. His heartbeat did not accelerate. His hands remained dry. He knew the law. He knew his rights. More importantly, he knew that he had forced the city to respect them. Jeremiah activated the turn signal, turned onto another street, and drove home to Naomi. The nightmare had ended. The watch continued. That is the story of how one corrupt officer selected the wrong victim and caused an entire system of corruption to collapse. Bryce Maddox believed he was the law. He forgot that the law must be a shield protecting the innocent, not a weapon serving the powerful. Jeremiah did more than win back his own freedom. He used his position to free dozens of people who never possessed the authority or resources to defend themselves. The lesson is unmistakable. Justice is not simply given. It must be fought for. What would you have done in Jeremiah's position? Would you have accepted the settlement and walked away? Or would you have continued fighting for every other victim? Share your thoughts in the comments. When this story of justice moves you, press the like button. It helps the channel reach more viewers. Subscribe and activate notifications so you never miss another story about crime, consequences, and justice.